Hello and welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. In this part, I'm just going to do a disclaimer about where the doomers may actually have a point. Because not everything the doomers say is automatically wrong. Like I did a poll which really kind of inspired me to do this series about that, along with a lot of doomer related comments that I've been getting on certain videos of mine and just searching YouTube and seeing how pessimistic to the extreme that a lot of other financial and economics and news related YouTubers are. So it's like, I feel like just given how bearish and pessimistic YouTube is in the world, it makes me look like an optimist by default. But I'm no Pollyanna, and I acknowledge that a lot of the concerns of doomers have valid points, and I'm going to go into them. The first one is the geographic determination. Doomer mentality makes sense in certain parts of the world that have a history of people just grinding at a low living standard and really no sign of improvement, and any chances of elevating in a fair way are usually taken away from a corrupt and autocratic government. Those are places where it does make sense to be a doomer. Like historically, the most obvious example of the most doomer country in the world is probably Russia. In Russia, it's always a joke is that like you have 2 good years for every 8 bad years, and that's really kind of been the history of the economy and the social fabric of Russia. I mean, it takes a doomer type country to have the most doomer ideology of all, Soviet communism, rise to the top. Like if people were in a happy society, I don't think that Lenin and his comrades would have been nearly as successful as they were. The weather probably has something to do with it there. It's brutally cold in the winter and it's a harsh and steppe environment in a large part of what is now Russia. And they've had histories of food shortages and violence and wars and social strife, and it continues to this day. So yeah, if you live in Russia, it would make more sense to be a doomer, but your solution would be to try to find a way to move, or try to figure out, or if you are patriotic, figure out a way to make your country better and to break that cycle. There are several other countries in the world that are probably with more sense to be a doomer. Whether it's some Western European countries whose peak was pre-World War II and have since really spiraled down into irrelevancy. But at least with Western Europe, you do have a solution. You can't, like there is a standard of living decline in those places, or certain malaise economically, there still is enough opportunity that a person individually can succeed in those places. And also, those places it's relatively easy to move to a country that the doomer mentality does not apply, and you could use your skills and build a real opportunity if Western Europe is too far gone. And that's a place where doomer mentality may be true. In places where there's really no sort of economic or social freedom, it may be true. So there's a geographical element. I mean, my bias comes from living in the United States for over 90% of my life and being an American. Doomerism doesn't really apply in the United States, or North America really in general. And most of the developed world, doomerism does not make sense really to live your life as an individual. The other sense outside geography where the doomers may have a point is in social issues. And I don't really talk about social issues on this channel because that's more the realm of something called analyzing sociology with Nick. But the point I am going to make about social issues and just problems on a societal level in general, societal problems are solved by the urgency that the problem needs to be solved. If it's like an economic and scarcity problem, it will be solved. Political will doesn't really matter. Political will change to solve the problem. If you really want to know what a real problem is in the world, if it's a real problem in the world, there are businesses, governments, NGOs, and or advocacy groups who are actually putting their money where their mouth is and doing something about solving the problem, and mostly in a nonpartisan way. The other thing, really, in terms of what is a fake political problem, is one where you have people either not do anything about, or you have businesses, governments, and advocacy groups really just spend a ton of money and resources, but the only thing they do is just pushing an argument, which just doesn't solve the problem, but just increases the tension of it and just tries to sell a narrative more than actually doing something about it. I can go into examples on that in a different video. But when it comes to social issues, the main problem, though, is that there are the vested interests in keeping the social issue, the problem causing the social issue that you don't like personally, are usually stronger than the desire to fix it. Because if that wasn't the case, it would be fixed. But given the flawed nature of humanity and a lot of economic and material comfort reasons that a certain social issue exists, those interests become entrenched, and as a result, it usually takes multiple generations of bad decisions or something radical, usually either technologically driven or economically driven, to change the social incentives to fix that problem or to change the problem into something else. As we've seen with just traditional societies in general, things will stay the same no matter how flawed they are, because people get used to it, or they're comfortable with it, or they like it, whether or not it's good for them. And so if you really want to see a problem, you need to see multiple generations of people succumbing to the failures of that problem to have some sort of real change. But the problem with that is, even though I'm optimistic that I think social issues do get fixed with enough time, a multiple generation solution is usually too long that the doomer will not see the positive change in the social issue in their lifetime. That's why they may have a point. It may just be simply too slow, low degree of positive change, for the doomer to recognize it. But apart from those two, I generally think that the doomer argument is flawed, and I'm going to be continuing to debunk it in the rest of these videos. Thanks for watching.